Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
Good news! He's back! Dan Rubenstein!
I am.
Welcome back to the show, my friend. We missed you on Saturday night, Sunday morning. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I missed you too. I was so impressed that you were able to do a solo show. And I know there are podcasters and radio hosts that, discuss any number of topics that are able to do that kind of thing solo, but that's not a muscle that we specifically stretch at all, basically. Occasionally. But really, that's a rare occurrence for this show. You seem to do a good job. I jumped in and watched it silently for about 90 seconds. I don't know if you saw me in the comments. But you seem to be confident. You seem to have a good hair night. There was a look of energy in your eyes. And so I don't know if people disagreed with everything you had to say about Week 9 action that was basically done unfolding by the time you recorded it. But the response seems to be good. I watched some football on Saturday, but I had wedding festivities to attend to late in the afternoon and getting ready and doing all sorts of stuff and socializing with wedding stuff. But I watched a chunk, and then I furiously watched as much as I could on the flight back, the 4-hour flight back from San Diego to Chicago, and then watched more last night, watched more this morning, tried to ingest as much as I possibly could, and then there was the Brian Kelly fired story that sort of threw all of us into a pit of, okay, why? We know why it happened, but where are we going from here? What's the money situation? Who's making the decisions?
Oh my gosh. We're going to get into that. There's a lot to discuss on that front. But you had a good time at the wedding. I understand there was another Uber situation, though.
Tease. We'll discuss it later. Yes.
We did have another Uber situation. We had an Uber situation up in State College as well. But alas, we will get to that. It is a pleasure, as always, to have you back. It is a privilege to be in this seat alongside you. And it is a privilege to be among the Verballerhood. Hit follow, hit subscribe so that you do not miss any of our episodes.
Yes.
Of course, we've got verballers.com. That's where you can go if you want to support what Dan and I do. Bonus episodes, ad-free episodes, play in the games, vote in the polls that we're going to talk about here in a second. Participate in the Discord.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff out there for you at verballers.com if you're a fan of the show. But alas, Dan, we should start at the very top.
The coaching
carousel.
The roar is getting a little bit louder each and every Sunday. Dan Rubenstein, it has been active on the coaching side of things here for the last few weeks. We had a couple big chips fall, that being James Franklin and then Billy Napier. I had speculated a little bit without knowing anything, obviously, when I did the stream on Saturday night, that perhaps Brian Kelly could be next. At a minimum, we knew it wasn't going well for Brian Kelly.
Correct.
At LSU. The offense, they've not been able to reboot that. Defensively, they've been mostly pretty good. That was until the second half of that A&M game on Saturday night when A&M just blew the doors off them. So it came apart rather quickly. It seemed apparent that things were not going to live up to preseason expectations here in 2025. And amid a steady drumbeat of rumors and speculation and whispers throughout the day on Sunday, the news came down around 8 p.m. Eastern-ish on Sunday night that, in fact, Brian Kelly was fired.
Correct.
At LSU. He's got a sizable buyout. There is some offset language in that. So if he ends up taking another job, it's not quite as big a hit to LSU. Similar in some respects to what we saw go down at Penn State with James Franklin. But this is a pretty big move because I think instantly this vaults to the top of the power rankings as arguably the best job that is available in college football, mindful of the fact that there could be more to come down the line. I don't think it was a gigantic surprise that they would move on Brian Kelly, but I just think the way everything unraveled for LSU, 9 weeks into the season amid all of the hype, all of the talking that we did in the run up to this year.
Right.
Talk about a turn of fortunes. Just incredible the way this thing unfolded over the last month or so.
An incredible run of 2-3 years of LSU football intrigue, right? To go from a record-setting Heisman quarterback offense to a disastrous offense, given, the return of Garrett Nussmeier and the promise of a deep stable of running backs and receivers and tight ends, and I guess the ceiling or the potential of those guys seemed to be super intriguing. And the big question was, can the defense continue to take big steps forward? Seemingly, yes, before this weekend at least, that the defense was not the problem with this LSU team. If you were going to list the problems that needed to be solved, defense was nowhere near the top. And they just couldn't figure things out at any one given time. And Brian Kelly's specific tenure was marred by immediate promise. You have a lot of Brian Kelly experience, and we're going to go all over the place with this, but you were positive there would be quarterback controversies, plural, and there were none, basically, right?
Right.
That they bring in Jaden Daniels, and he is good and then incredible. And then Garrett Nussmeier takes over and is largely good, albeit inconsistent, but there was never a huge call for like, this program cannot continue this way. And so obviously everything, came to a head on Saturday night with that second half against Texas A&M. And we'll get there more specifically. Well, you obviously already went there Saturday night, but Brian Kelly seems to have been these past couple years on constant edge, right? The loss to USC to begin last season, where he's slamming the table, the post game after I think the Florida win, when there was a question, was it the Florida win, when he was like, why aren't you saying nicer things? Right? We just won a game. Like, right. He's been under a ton of pressure, has worn that pressure very publicly, it seems. And the report was there was an argument with some power brokers and Scott Woodward, the AD, about firing assistants, and it all came to a head after the game, and gets fired unceremoniously Sunday after the A&M game. You could see it coming. You didn't know if it was going to happen this week or a different week or in the offseason. Like, it was just not meant to be long term, and it was not clearly getting better in any one phase on offense. Or, sorry, that's a weird way of putting it. It was not heading in a direction where you're like, I see this is going to go well soon.
No.
And it had to happen. I don't know what your reaction was in terms of how quickly this happened. Like, this is going to be an absolutely bonkers carousel season. It already is, with openings at Florida, LSU, UCLA, Virginia Tech, Penn State. Like, it's already crazy. UAB, Colorado State. There's going to be I'm not saying those things to be like cheeky. Like, there are going to be reverberations with every one of these jobs throughout the sport to like 73 schools.
Well, the biggest loser in this, outside of Brian Kelly, is a team like Penn State, which thought it was moving first and has since been seemingly pushed into the shadows because of some other really high-profile openings that have emerged here over the last few weeks. This isn't to say that the Penn State job is any different now, but relative to the field, there's just a lot more competition. The thought that came to mind, you remember years ago when South Carolina, I think, moved to fire Will Muschamp in advance of what appeared to be a bidding war then for Tom Herman.
Right.
And I don't remember if it was Will Muschamp or whoever at South Carolina got rid of, but they didn't get Tom Herman because suddenly there was a bunch of stuff that went down in the coaching world. There were a bunch of other openings that popped up, and South Carolina ended up being just kind of an afterthought amid a coaching carousel. And I fear a little bit for that on the Penn State side. This is not a Penn State conversation, but certainly with LSU opening up, as I said at the top, this job vaults right to the top. Each of the previous, 3 coaches who have been at LSU have won national championships. Brian Kelly did not. I'm curious to know if what we have seen go on around college football with teams firing coaches, specifically the Florida firing.
Yeah.
If that had anything to do with the early termination of Brian Kelly. Because you're right. I mean, this was not going in a good direction. It felt like it was going to end up at this point. Anyway, if there was kind of a flashpoint with a conversation between Kelly and Woodward and that play caller duties, things of that nature, then maybe that contributed. But I do wonder if all of the talk about Florida targeting Lane Kiffin led to LSU wondering, hey, should we make the move now so that we don't get left on the sidelines, if maybe that's the guy that they want? Because if you read Bruce's article, if you read many articles out there, Lane Kiffin is the first line on seemingly all of them.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of teams that are going to want Lane Kiffin's services. So I wonder if that had anything to do with it. Of course, we'll never know for sure. On the BK side, I mean, I think it is telling for sure what you just described of him very publicly wearing that pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Because Brian Kelly, for the overwhelming majority of his career, has been good at not doing that. We've described him as many things. I would say chief among them, a politician. All
right.
So
no, I was just going to say he wears it with his red face on the sidelines. We've seen those Notre Dame pictures.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, of course. But in terms of the press conference,
sure.
In terms of the press conference, Brian Kelly has been a seasoned political professional.
Sure.
And
I
people
agree.
who cover the team will tell you as much. Nobody really knows this guy. That's always been his deal. And he's very good at kind of keeping true feelings, keeping true thoughts close to the vest, at least when he is in front of the cameras like that. And the fact that it seemed as though he was feeling a little bit more pressure than usual on that stage, I thought was telling.
Yeah.
And it did feel a bit like he was flailing, right? He couldn't get the coordinator thing right. It was clear that he understood the expectations within the LSU community and that he was not living up to them. And so, yeah, I expected we would have some sort of change, but it did surprise me that it came in the manner that it did. And I do wonder if it had something to do with what else has gone on around the world of college football with respect to other openings.
Right. So, you're going to have the names that have been bandied about for some of these big jobs. You mentioned Lane Kiffin. Obviously, he has it very good at Ole Miss and in Oxford, both in terms of where that program is right now and annually threatening double-digit wins. And he's got a very clear level of autonomy in how he runs his program, right? The program like Ole Miss, which is not used to this level of consistent success in the modern era, has found a coach getting them to that point. So they're letting him do what he wants. And does that kind of freedom exist at LSU? Does that kind of freedom exist at Florida or Penn State, right? Who knows? Who's to say? There's a lot of money behind the scenes at those types of places that like having a say in things and like having their hands shaken at golf events. And that's not necessarily Lane Kiffin's life, allegedly, in Oxford, Mississippi. And so he's got it good.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if he's got bad blood with anybody behind the scenes at any of these places because he wanted a job at a different point. There's always going to be those kind of behind the scenes things. But LSU is also in this position of looking for a coach now because it's not just their own search and vetting candidates. They want it to be very clearly known that this job is open. So if Lane Kiffin is weighing things, if Kenny Dillingham is weighing things, if Mike Elko, take your pick of any of John Sumrall, any of the names that are being talked about for jobs like this are considering their future, that they know that LSU may in fact be an option that they could go after, or may be an option that is going after them. So LSU is a great job. LSU, you mentioned the national championships, the previous coaches who won national championships, and Ed Orgeron, Les Miles, and Nick Saban. And it's a place you can recruit at an incredibly high level, top 5. It's a transfer portal destination. You're going to have financial support. Obviously, there is some leadership questions at LSU at the moment. They don't have a president. They have an interim president. The governor is part of this search and decision-making process.
That's what you really want. You really want politicians part of the most critical conversations.
Doesn't seem to be an incredibly popular guy at the moment, but I suppose that's a different conversation.
Sure.
That LSU is in a period of transition, not the least of which is like, hey, this is the AD who gave both Jimbo Fisher and Brian Kelly these buyouts. Like, nobody has been more talented recently at finding coaches past their prime and paying them over $100 million not to coach. Why is this guy still employed at the moment? Maybe that changes soon. I don't know. So LSU, it does seem like they're at an extremely obvious transition point here in terms of behind the scenes and very publicly. So we'll see. LSU is going to be one of those programs too, though, that's going to be just fine in terms of not even rebuilding. I think people just either want to play for LSU or not. I don't know. I saw this. I don't remember where I saw this. I saw this online. It was a good point being made that it's one of the few schools that people commit to and not necessarily the coach.
I saw that too.
And so not an original thought for me, but I sort of respond, I think, affirmatively to that. So It's a fascinating job. Brian Kelly will be hired elsewhere.
He will if he wants to be.
Well, I think
If
it's
he wants
probably
to
going to be
be.
part of his language.
It is part of the
buyout,
offset
yeah.
language in the contract. And again, the way that this works is the buyout figure on its face is something like 54 million, give
Yeah.
or take. But if he takes another job, there will be an offset involved based on what he has paid. They also structured this so that the buyout isn't due all upon the termination.
Yeah.
It can be spread out over several years and months.
Yes.
So it's not like LSU is on the hook for this money right now, and they may not be on the hook for all of it, depending on what BK does next. I would not put it past him to just say, I'm going to take a $1 media job and you can pay me my $54 million, please.
Exactly right.
But we will see. Certainly, if he wants to coach again, there will be no shortage of options that are out there. I think I counted something like 8 Power 4 openings.
Yeah.
Right now, there are definitely more to come in the very near future over the next month or so as we get really down the stretch run here.
By the way, Colorado ? Michigan State ? Wisconsin ? Florida State ?
Yeah.
There's a lot out there. And then there was the story. I don't know if you touched on this Saturday night. There was the story and then the denial about Sark and
Texas,
potential interest going from
Yep.
the Texas job to a job like the Tennessee Titans in the NFL.
I mean, that's sort of the point, though. The point is this coaching carousel is friggin' nuts. And my point on Saturday night was, I mean, at the time we didn't know about LSU.
There
I
are
had
so many bad decisions, Ty.
I know. I kicked around the idea that maybe LSU could make a move, but I didn't know anything.
Right.
I started the show by talking about the whole Texas rumor thing
Mm-hmm.
and how it would essentially be like dropping a second Jupiter in the solar system.
Yeah.
In terms of coaching openings and this carousel that we speak so much of now, having Texas in there, in that equation, would just upset the balance of the force completely. Whether you're a Penn State or a Virginia Tech, like everybody has to go down a few pegs in terms of who they think their top candidate is, who they should be targeting. If you've got jobs like Texas, now LSU out there.
Buddy, Auburn.
It definitely changes Auburn. It
Hugh
definitely
Freeze
changes the
outlasted these
calculation.
dudes.
It changes the
Somehow.
calculation.
We'll see how Auburn ends. Obviously, Auburn a nice step forward with their win and scoring more than 20 points in an SEC game with their win against Arkansas buys him a little bit of time. But this is going to – there are only so many coaches to go around, by the way.
That's the thing. Like if you're Will Stein right now, if you really want a big job,
Buddy, if you're Will Stein right now, let's get focused. Let's get focused on
Well, I'm just saying.
some
I'm just saying.
adjustments. Yeah, Oregon, Wisconsin was not a great watch. But yes, no, there are only so many coordinators that seem to have the necessary experience and upside. There are only so many head coaches who seem like they could handle some sort of huge power conference job or, you know, a G6 head coach who could make that leap. There's only so many guys. And then there's going to be 7 schools who are like, oh God, we're down to our 11th choice. Okay. And like splashing water, like I guess Frank Reich for an interim year. Like we'll do that too. Like he'll just go on a tour of interim jobs.
Yeah.
It's going to be a wild Thanksgiving time. I mean, the portal is what, early January now?
Yeah.
Portal's early January, but early signing day is before then. It's going to be something else. And I can't wait. Truly can't wait. There's going to be a $15 million head coach.
There are going to be some very bad decisions made.
Like,
There
what is
really
Lane
are.
Kiffin's worth right now in the open market? If Ole Miss, Florida, and LSU want him, what is his worth?
I mean, he is Scrooge McDuck diving into the sea of gold coins.
Yes.
And that's whether he stays at Ole Miss or whether he goes to any number of these openings that are out there. Chief among them, I think, being Florida and LSU. It seems like they're both in the running for Lane's services. Per our friend Bruce Feldman over at The Athletic, the candidates that he lists out for LSU, Lane Kiffin, obviously, Eli Drinkwitz,
Yep.
Kenny Dillingham, Clark Lee, and John Sumrall. Those are the 5 names. Some are more realistic than others. I think it stands to reason that a guy like a Kenny Dillingham is worth a phone call, but definitely seems like an ASU guy through and through.
Of course.
I would not expect
I'm
it.
almost positive he's from Arizona, went to ASU, and so did his wife.
Yeah, there's
Like, I
a
think it
lot
has
of
deep roots. Yeah.
there's a lot of reason to think that Dillingham's not going anywhere, but I look at a name like Clark Lee. I don't know if he's high enough profile for the LSU job.
I mean, he's top 10 team in the SEC
I'm just
right
saying.
now. Yeah.
I don't know.
He's Nashville through and through.
But he's Nashville through and through.
Yeah.
LSU, any of these jobs can probably afford to pay him a lot more than what he's getting right now at Vandy. But is that even a consideration? I don't know. Right. So there is definite value in staying where you're at if you feel like you have a good thing going.
Yeah.
There is definite value in not necessarily chasing the bag if you feel comfortable with the system that you have built. I think that's part of why Bruce did not go to the same extremes as some others and listing Marcus Freeman on this list. I understand why people would want Marcus Freeman. It totally makes sense to me. I don't think he's leaving. I think he's got a good thing. I think he's got it humming at Notre Dame. He's got an exciting young quarterback. He's building a young defense. I understand why you got to make that call, but I don't think he's moving.
Yeah.
And so that puts a lot of teams like LSU in a really interesting spot. To your point, there just aren't a whole lot of coaches to go around that rise to the level of some of these marquee openings.
Which is why I say $15 million, $17 million. That's supply and demand.
They should throw $20 million at Saban.
LSU?
Throw $20 million at Saban.
He said it was the biggest regret was leaving LSU for the Dolphins, that he
throw
had it really good
25
at LSU.
million, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes to get Nick Saban. That's what I would do.
I think he's got it so good right now.
I'd throw whatever he wants at him.
How old is he?
Make him say no. Doesn't matter.
70s?
Make him say no.
Oh, they will. They will have that. I mean, look, Scott Woodward is not afraid, if he's employed, to have that kind of conversation. We're like, we'll give you a $300 million buyout.
Make him say no.
Yeah, of course. But then, you have to be realistic. It's been a very good season, by the way, for also the, media these days. Coaches, I think, so we had Sark. We've had Mike Elko. We've had, I think, Eli Drinkwitz. And Lane Kiffin had the conversation with his team, which I think is always,
which is
very
the most adult
conversation.
way that you can handle it.
Yes. I remember Chip Kelly doing that before with Oregon. We're like, my name being in these conversations is about the hard work that we all do together. It's if my name weren't in these conversations, that means we all weren't doing something right. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I cannot wait. This is going to be great.
We will do our best here in this on-demand audio format to keep you up to speed as best we can.
Who's going to be that name?
I don't know, man.
I'm saying, who's going to be that name that you're just like, oh, Casey Keeler. Okay. Right? That you're just like, Penn State hired Casey Keeler. Okay. Somebody's going to be out of complete nowhere. And, Penn State hired Tom O'Brien. All right.
Bringing back Bill O'Brien. It's not going so hot at Boston College.
No,
anyway, look,
not.
We will do our part here to keep you up to speed. Of course, we welcome your feedback, solidverbal@gmail.com, Dan.
Yes.
Before we get to the polls, before we get to our Verballer Top 12 projected college football playoff bracket, which I translated and put together for all y'all.
Yes.
We've got a little game here that I believe we're going to call Snapchat. Is that right?
Snapchat. That's what I have down here. It's a name we invented, I believe. Yes?
Sure. Never heard that word before in my life.
So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a Week 9, not opinion, but a snapshot of a Week 9 performance or team. I think we have a sound here, somewhere in here. Right? That's Polaroid?
Yeah.
Nice little snapshot.
Yeah, just give it one more time. Maybe pump up the volume a little bit.
Okay, here it is.
Yeah.
Feel
Did
good?
you have a Polaroid camera?
A long time ago, yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. Shake it. I don't think shaking does anything. I think it just sort of reveals itself no matter how vigorously it's shaken. And I want to take a Week 9 result. We'll start here, okay?
Yeah.
Is this Kansas State that we have just seen throwing the ball all over Kansas, getting Texas Tech, I believe, next week in the Little Apple?
Yep.
Is this now who Kansas State is? I almost want to say, using the Polaroid thing, is this before or after? Okay? After being they're a completed project, and yes, before they were a little lumpy in certain places. Real struggle to September. Is this an after image, or are we somewhere in between? Before, after, or in between in this Kansas State snapshot with a devastating pass rush, forcing a ton of mistakes, forcing threes and out? I don't know. 3 and outs on Kansas and dominating that team in a big rivalry moment on the road in a chaotic Big 12. Is this an after image for Kansas State?
Well, you're going to have to explain to me whether or not it's an after image, before image, during image. But here's what I'm going to say about Kansas
After
State.
means like this is who they are now. They've completed their transformation.
This is who they are.
Yeah. Okay.
This is who they are. And I will talk a little bit about this when we get to projected playoff brackets. By the way, Kansas State is not in that bracket. That's not what I'm saying.
But can affect it.
But can affect it in a really meaningful way. And to go further, Dan, there is a scenario in which Kansas State could still end up playing for the Big 12 title.
Oh, my God. Okay.
All right. It is not likely. It would be a very hard road. But if Kansas State continues on a run, and get some help, there is a chance that they could even play for the title. You know, I'm a bit of a Big 12/conference tiebreaker hobbyist.
Yeah.
I look at these things every week starting in middle of October. I've got a whole list of things here that I'll read through with all four of the power conferences. But look, K-State, to your point, could absolutely affect things in a really, really big way the remainder of this season. And what dawned on me as I was watching the game that they rolled one up on Kansas. I mean, They killed them. I was starting to think, okay, this team is now finding itself. This team is clicking. This team is finding itself. This could be who they are now. And if that is the case, if Kansas State finally lives up to what, I and many others thought they could be in the preseason, then that's going to be a very serious wrinkle in the Big 12, which is frankly wide open. Not to give away the game too much, but I'll say it here. We know about BYU. But Texas Tech, Utah, Cincinnati, Houston is 7-1.
Of course they are.
TCU, Kansas State. There is this smattering of teams that I think all have a really big part to play, are all going to be very active with respect to that season-ending tiebreaker.
We'll see with ASU, by the way, with Arizona State. Yeah.
Arizona State, I think to a lesser degree, but sure, we can throw them in there as well.
They'll affect things, though.
They will absolutely affect things. So it's just a wide-open conference, as ever. And if Kansas State goes on a bit of a run, even if they don't make it all the way into that, top two conversation, they're absolutely going to affect things. I thought they looked damn impressive. And I realized it was Kansas. Kansas doesn't really play a whole lot of defense, but it's not about that with Kansas State this year. It's not really been about that at all. It has been about, do they look like they know what they're doing out there? Does it seem like they are organized? Can they stay out of their own way? And it felt to me like we saw all of that rectify itself in the rivalry spot of all times. So for me, I was damn impressed by what I saw from Kansas State.
Yeah, if the term mistake prone is not used in connection with a Kansas State Saturday, Kansas State's largely going to win games. No. Like, they turned Kansas over, I think, 4 times. Yep. They were better. Actually, they were better, I want to say, on 3rd and 4th down. They put up more yardage, and they were it seemed like they were in Jalen Daniels' face just constantly. The pass rush was there. They created confusion, and to do so on the road, I am hopeful that it is an after image because, like you, I am a fan of a chaotic November in the Big 12, and Kansas State, even though they have the losses, we are also now talking about a TCU team that's inconsistent, a BYU team that looks incredibly consistent in that they find ways to figure out a winning formula as the game goes on. And we're now talking about a Texas Tech that should have a very, very good, if not excellent defense all year long, but is down to Mitch Griffiths, right? Will Hammond gets hurt. It was a non-contact knee injury in the second quarter. I don't know. I don't think I've seen anything significant, but maybe I've just missed it. And Mitch Griffiths played well, right, for Texas Tech. That was Oklahoma State. But we're down to a 3rd stringer at Texas Tech at the moment. We shall see. So, yes, It is, Iowa State is not going to be competing. Doesn't look like they are built to compete for anything big at the moment. It's going to be great. Cannot wait. Happy that Kansas State is going to have a say in what happens.
Yeah, by the way, Will Hammond done for the year with a torn ACL.
He is done. Okay.
Yeah. So that's a huge bummer because, again, we saw him on the road to Utah and what he did in that affair. Suddenly, the Baron Morton health question becomes much more important.
Yep.
Much more important. So what else
Baron
you got?
Morton,
What are the
quote,
questions?
ready to go for critical Big 12 stretch as of 55
Well,
minutes
that's good.
ago.
That's good.
Okay. I hope it lasts. What's next? Snapshot. Vanderbilt.
Mm.
Snapshot Vanderbilt. Now, they get a win over Mizzou that was crazy impressive, largely because of the defense, it seems. I watched a good chunk of this game. They got key stops. And Mizzou turned to, it was Matt Zollers, the backup quarterback, when Bo Prabula went down. He's likely done for the year. I think I saw outside chance later, which is not a term I love. So I feel pretty terrible for Mizzou fans and that team because Bo Prabula was a hell of a spark. Vandy's now their highest rank they've been since 1930-something, 7, at number 9. This is who Vanderbilt is, you believe now at this point? Because I know you said in that show that I always love Vanderbilt. I'm Mr. Danderbilt. Do you believe at this point that Vanderbilt is who they are now showing themselves to be?
I mean, I think they have shown themselves as the same team all year.
Agree, but they're more tested now, having faced Alabama, LSU, and now Mizzou.
They're more tested, but they're not really anything different than they've been.
Okay.
What I found was most interesting about this Mizzou game, and I mentioned this on Saturday night, Vanderbilt's entire formula, and you guys have heard me say this a zillion times over now, so this is nothing new. It's based on controlling the ball. It's based on efficiency, limiting opposing drives, making the opponent, forcing yourself to be more efficient, but more importantly, forcing your opponent to be efficient if they want to win.
Yes.
They didn't do any of that against Mizzou. They lost the time of possession pretty handily. They weren't that efficient when they had the football. This was a game, for all intents and purposes, that sort of broke their little mold. And they had to figure out a way to get it done. This is obviously a close game, 17-10.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they find a way to win this game against a good team, albeit without Bo Prabula for most of the game with Matt Zollers coming in, but it was still a very losable game. Mizzou played okay with Matt Zollers. I just think the way that Vandy found a way to get this one done speaks volumes about there being more to this team than just that very specific formula I have talked about. Because every team faces this. And more often than not, it's what defines a team as you go through a season. It's not about the things we know. It's about the stuff we don't.
Right.
How do you react to a new situation, to a new wrinkle? We saw that this week with Vanderbilt. It might not have been the sexiest game. It might not be the biggest game that we talk about in the headlines, because there were a bunch of other big ones, and obviously the BK news and all this stuff kind of grew up around it, and we didn't talk a whole lot about Vandy Mizzou, but
right.
I just thought the way that they won was impressive. I think this is a fully formed team at this point. Now,
and able to compete for the conference?
I think so.
I think so too.
I think so. I mean, that's just where we're at in the SEC.
They have the Tennessee game.
The SEC is kind of wide open. It's kind of wide open.
Agreed.
Kind of. And I'll get to that too. But the game this week on the road at Texas is damn interesting for reasons maybe that I can outline a little bit later on. Got Auburn at home.
Yeah.
Got Kentucky at home. Got Tennessee on the road to close out the year. Maybe the biggest Vandy-Tennessee game ever, frankly, with what might be on the line here for Vanderbilt. I think they're good enough to beat those 4 teams. And they beat all those 4 teams, and yeah, the conversation here is, can Vandy get into and can Vandy play for the SEC title? If not that, if you win those 4 games, you go 11-1 in the SEC, Vandy's in the playoff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes, absolutely.
They're in the playoff, right?
They are. Can I give you another snapshot? The Pitt Panthers. Okay. Pitt is at the point where they have...
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, please.
You're welcome, of course. So they lose a terrible game at West Virginia, chaotic game against West Virginia, and a close game to Louisville at home. Since that game, they've beaten Florida State, destroyed Boston College, comfortably beat Syracuse, and pretty comfortably beat NC State, who did score on them, but Pitt scored 50 plus. And we should also mention they had a quarterback change that has, sort of paid significant dividends. So the Pitt Panthers, are they transformed enough from their before picture taken in the middle of the backyard brawl against West Virginia with Mason Heinschel, if I pronounced that correctly, who has been nothing short of legitimately good as a freshman, given the context that he is, the relative reality, that he is a freshman. He's been good. He's been a really good ACC quarterback since taking over on the road, at home, you name it. Are you a believer that this current Pitt snapshot, reeling off these wins, is an accurate one. This is their after image. They're going to threaten a very difficult stretch to finish out the year in what's Georgia Tech, Miami, and Notre Dame.
Yep.
Are you a believer in what we're seeing being the real Pitt?
I am.
Okay.
I am not necessarily a believer in them ripping off a 4-0 finish to this season because of what they've got left.
Right.
They do get Notre Dame at home, which in the past has definitely been one of those games that gives me heartburn.
Not an amazing home field advantage.
Not an amazing home field advantage, but
Yeah.
alas, there's a little bit of baggage with a game like that. Are they good enough right now in their present state to knock off a Georgia Tech or a Miami? I would say, yeah, I don't think both, but I think they're good enough to beat one of the two because the ACC also feels like it's in a great deal of flux. If Pitt is going to be a team now that can throw for 400 yards a game with this quarterback, as they did this past week against NC State, that suddenly changes things. What I don't like about Pitt is that they're not really running the ball that effectively.
Right.
You know, the numbers so far this year with what they've done on the ground have not been
Right. They're a one-dimensional team. Yeah.
anywhere close to what I expected. And so I think, you know, outside of Stanford, who they play this week, of those remaining three teams, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Miami, all three are good enough to beat a one-dimensional team. But if you're that good enough on offense through the air, there's always a chance. And Mason Heischel has obviously found something here that Pat Narduzzi thinks they can use to their advantage. He's played really, really well. So am I buying Pitt right now as like the fully evolved version of its former self? I would say yes.
Right.
Am I buying Pitt as a legitimate ACC contender, which is still a possibility if they win out? No, I'm not buying that yet. But I think it's at least a conversation. Like, I don't fully believe it, even though I really believed in Pitt at the start of the year.
Yeah.
I don't fully believe it that they can go on this run and that they can get themselves back in this thing. But if nothing more, the changes that they have made midstream to this offense have been incredible. You know, having the gall to bench Eli Holstein, who everybody was really high on through
The
most
first
of the
half
last
of
season.
last year. Yeah.
Yeah, and even, you know, the beginning part of this year, the fact that they made the move when they did, he has given this whole team new life, Mason Heischel. So I'm in on Pitt, not as high on Pitt, obviously, as I was at the start of the year, but as it stands right now, they're only 4-1 in the ACC. You know, there's a bunch of one-loss teams in there, all of which are very much in this conversation. So why not Pitt? Why not now? We'll see what they can do.
I'm totally in on Pitt as an ACC threat, like the best of recent Pitt. I think Pitt is that once again. You're right about the schedule. They have Georgia Tech a week before Tech has Georgia, and they have Miami for its second consecutive road game. I want to say after Syracuse. It's like Miami traveling up to Syracuse, back home, then back to Pittsburgh, which doesn't seem great in terms of a travel schedule. And I think Miami is largely road to finish out November. I think 3 of their 5 games are on the road to finish things out. And Notre Dame, I don't think, is sandwiched by anything, but that won't affect their ACC, standing, the Notre Dame game either way. I think Pitt is absolutely, you watch what they're able to do on defense. They stop the run. They do a decent job pressuring the passer, and they're moving the ball with a quarterback who is still feeling out the college game. And so it almost feels like Mason Heinchel's potential is, unknown at this moment because he is so young. So it's an exciting time, I think, to be a Pitt fan. Hopefully they reward their fans for sticking with them after last year's debacle of a finish, losing 6 or 7 in a row.
I mean, we got a long email last week talking about Pitt.
Oh, good.
And how this sort of new energy has transformed the fan base, transformed the team, how it has definitely, to your point, given hope. So I'm all for that.
Yeah.
And it's a really tough stretch to close out this season. They're definitely going to need to grow up very quickly. Young Mason Heischel is going to have his work cut out for him going up against the likes of Notre Dame and Georgia Tech and Miami. But if through some miracle of the universe, Pitt would go 3-0 against the remaining ACC schedule, which is Stanford, Georgia Tech, and Miami, Pitt would be in this thing. Pitt would probably be playing for the ACC title.
I'm going to give you a team that nobody ever talks about, okay? Nobody. The Texas Longhorns.
Yeah.
The Texas Longhorns are, I'm going to say, impressive in that they were able to come back against Mississippi State. I saw that they were down 10, 17 points late in this game, and I was like, psh, Texas does it again. They lose.
I thought they were toast. I thought they were toast.
Totally cooked.
Yeah.
Watched the game after the fact, came away extremely impressed that this Texas team didn't go into that dark night alone, whatever. I totally screwed up my analogy here, my reference. But they did not go easily into that something night. I don't know. The pass rush was insane late in that game.
7 sacks of Blake Shapen.
They overwhelmed, and I really loved Blake Shapen's performance in that game. Like, he played confidently. He went into the teeth of that Texas defense. He felt empowered. And the Texas defense turned it up. They turned up the heat, and they absolutely won that game for Texas. I love that they were getting the ball to Ryan Wingo in space. He is Mr. Screen. They might not have all that confidence in Arch Manning throwing the ball downfield, and he's now hurt. I don't know to what extent. I don't know if more news has come out since, Matthew Caldwell won that game in overtime for the Horns. They've only lost once in the SEC, as you mentioned,
right.
A wide open SEC. They're in the thick of this SEC race with as disappointing as this offense has been this year. So my question to you, is this Texas team a team with a growth opportunity, or should we accept this current snapshot? They are a team that has talent, can do fun things, but ultimately need overtime to beat Mississippi State. They've already lost to one team that fired their coach in Florida. Is this one of those teams that just is who they are, and hopefully we get a good week from them and they can compete, but there's nothing you can count on about this team week to week?
Okay, so you want to hear my crazy theory?
I'm ready.
This is going to be one of those things that I say aloud, and I can't believe I'm saying it aloud, but it's definitely something that has been rattling around in the deep, dark corners of my mind with respect to Texas. And especially now on the heels of what could be or could not be rumors about Steve Sarkisian longer term as the coach.
Right.
Arch Manning had a pretty good statistical game here. And I thought there were definite moments throughout the course of this one where he showed some actual growth.
Okay.
Close to 350 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, had the 1 interception, but by and large, a pretty good game for Arch before he got hurt. I think Arch Manning has a concussion. I'm not a medical professional. He took quite a lick on the back of his head.
Yeah.
Seemed woozy walking off, needed the help of some people to just stay in a straight line.
It looked like his head sort of bounced off the turf, unfortunately.
He took a shot.
Yeah.
And I hope he's all right. But Matthew Caldwell came in, threw a really nice pass, back corner of the end zone to win that one in overtime. There have been other instances this year where Matthew Caldwell has come in. I remember saying to you, it's like, he seems like he's got a decent command of things. He's
in relief, yeah.
Been around college football forever. I think this is like his 4th team. But Matthew Caldwell in relief efforts so far has been halfway decent. Definitely is a different throwing motion that just, to me, feels a little bit better on the eyes, but that's neither here nor there.
Right.
My crazy theory is that Steve Sarkisian is actually testing the NFL waters because he knows he can't go somewhere else in college. He's already at Texas. If he
it's
wants
not a crazy
to get out,
theory. It was reported by Diana Rossini of The Athletic. Yeah.
If he wants to go somewhere, the NFL will be the spot. And my theory as to why he wants to go somewhere else, in addition to the fact that college football is just constantly crazy, is the fact that he knows Arch Manning is not the guy. And rather than stick around at Texas and have to deal with the fallout and answering a million questions about that,
right,
it's better to just take his talents to a different team in a different league where he doesn't have to worry about answering those questions. It's an easy out. It's the easiest escape hatch to get out from
all
under
to
what
just
could
not
be.
Answer Arch questions.
That's my theory. I prefaced it by saying it was a crazy theory.
I don't think your theory is crazy. I think your theory, I would twist it a little bit to say, how many coaches have we seen tie their careers and their job securities to the wrong quarterback?
Right.
And so if he were to leave and really do everything he can to pursue an NFL job, he is cutting that off.
I mean, can you bench Arch Manning?
Buddy, this is a whole other conversation.
Can you bench Arch Manning? And listen, Arch Manning looked better.
Wait.
Okay.
Can
Arch
Nick
Manning looked
Saban
better.
bench Arch Manning? Yes. Can Steve
Right.
Sarkisian bench Arch Manning? I don't know.
Arch looked good in this game, but Arch is, I think, going to be out. All right. If he had a concussion, he's probably out
Yeah.
for this week's game. I'm not a head doc. What do I know? But plenty of other people get a concussion. You're not back a week later. You're just not.
Right.
So if Matthew Caldwell comes in, if Matthew Caldwell looks half decent, instantly you're going to see comparisons to whatever Arch has done so far this season. And if they end up winning this game against Vanderbilt this week, which, by the way, they're favored,
Mm-hmm.
it brings up some interesting questions. Steve Sarkisian is going to be receiving all of them. And I just think bigger picture, again, crazy theory.
I mean, it's not that crazy.
Rather than hitch his college wagon to Arch Manning, whatever follows next season, it's better to just get out now. Go while your stock is still pretty high, and then you don't got to deal with it.
Any of these coaches who have gotten a taste of being a relatively successful head coach or coordinator in the NFL and are back coaching at college either have realized that they much prefer the lifestyle of the NFL, right? That you're just like, man, I can just sort of worry about football. Somebody else is drafting and I'm just, worrying about getting my guys ready and game planning, whatever. Or just have a sick preference like we do, a sick preference for the rhythms and realities of college football.
I mean, the Giants should hire Steve Sarkisian. Like, get in terms of like putting him next to a young quarterback that needs to be developed. I still like the idea of Steve Sarkisian, but on some level, you got to have the talent at the quarterback position in order to do that.
I mean, he's currently in a reality of having an extremely promising young quarterback who he did not successfully develop into a clearly successful college quarterback.
That's right.
Against some high-level competition, some not so high level.
So what is Texas now, though, to the broader question? Texas, I think, still has pretty damn good defense, had 7 sacks in this game, even though they gave up a bunch of points.
Yes.
But I think this was real growth from Texas because they looked like they were cooked and they scored 24 fourth quarter points to come back, get this one to overtime, and then win. So
I think you're right.
This is the type of never say die version of Texas that I needed to see to feel better about what they can do the rest of the way. It's still a bit of an uphill climb, but tough schedule, whatever. They're a 3-1 SEC team right now. Only got 1 loss in the SEC. So they're very much in this conversation. They just got to keep plodding forward. They still don't really run the ball.
No.
Which is why the quarterback position is more under the microscope, separate from the fact that there's a Manning playing quarterback. But all things being equal, I think I like where they're at, and I feel like this is a pretty good snapshot for what they could be.
I think this week is a good story. I think the season remains a bit of a failure. That this is not a Texas team built to struggle with Mississippi State or this version of Florida. With what they brought back on defense, and I know they're beat up more and more, they have failed to put together a consistent offensive line. They've failed to put together a running game. And while Arch Manning definitely has moments, that has been a developmental failure. To me, third-year guy. If they had come back to tie that game and send it to overtime and lost, I don't think the tenor of our conversation is all that different. Like, you can say good for them for pulling it out and for Matthew Caldwell, but I think the big win is that they came back. Good for them that they won. I just don't think it changes the outlook of what they can be and what their ceiling is. They're just too inconsistent, drive to drive.
I think that's fair. Give me one more snap thought.
Here, I'll play the sound again just for you.
Oh, please.
The Oregon Ducks.
I should be asking you.
So the Oregon Ducks, I watched this game.
Hold on.
Yes.
What's going on with Dante Moore?
I don't know, man. He might have broken his nose or something. He got a big old Wisconsin paw to the face on a run.
He got whacked in the face. I thought he broke his nose.
Yeah.
The highlights I saw were of him like holding a towel or something over his nose. But then he was just on the sidelines.
Yes.
So have they said anything about whether or not he's good to go? Or is this just sort of in limbo? Because he didn't look like he was in any kind of distress on the sidelines. Maybe they just kept him out. Like, where are you at with this? What's going on?
Okay, so Oregon wins the game 21-7. He gets hurt when it's 7-0 against a Wisconsin team that I don't think has scored two offensive touchdowns against a power conference team this season. So he goes out. He's replaced by a walk-on quarterback, up 7-0 against a pretty good Wisconsin defense and a completely absent Wisconsin offense. Dante Moore gets hit, is bleeding from the nose, is on the sideline, not really receiving treatment, and doesn't come back in the game. Dan Lanning says if it were an emergency, he could have. He's great to go, that he will be fine. They have a bye week this week, and then in Iowa City. It looks like it's a big noon game. I don't know if that's official yet. In a couple weeks in Iowa City. Oregon has struggled on offense against the decent to good teams that they've played this year. They struggled closing out drives on the road against Penn State. They struggled on offense. I think they scored one offensive touchdown against Indiana, and they scored a touchdown before the half against Wisconsin. Now, it's raining, it's windy, whatever, but both teams are dealing with it. There's bad weather all over the country, and they were putting up huge numbers and did so against Rutgers the week before against average to below average teams and have struggled on offense against the better teams on their schedule. I just think this is who they are. I don't think this is dramatically fixable this season. Now, the defenses that they have left are not incredible. They have Washington's defense, they have USC's defense, and Iowa's defense has been incredible. So after that Iowa game, they're not, Minnesota's up and down, Washington, USC. Iowa's going to be a huge test. I don't feel good about it at all. At all. As an Oregon fan, I think if they finish this season 10-2 with where they've been this year, I think that's a success. They currently have one loss to Indiana. I don't think their offense is built to adjust on the fly. I don't think they have the consistent offensive line play. I think their skill talent's incredible. I think the defense is largely incredible. I do not think this is an Oregon team that is a legitimate national title contender right now.
So you're saying that you think the version of Oregon we saw against Wisconsin is the version of Oregon that maybe to some extent we've seen all year and that we'll see the rest of the way?
Well, look, if Dante Moore gets comfortable early on in a game, I don't know what the analog here is, Ty. Like, if you walked into a party and the solid wife, Kate, came up to you and said, 3 girls just asked me, who's that guy? He's way more handsome and charming than everybody else here. You'd probably have a great party internally, right? Dante Moore has a little bit of that to him. If he's completing a couple of great passes early, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. If he struggles in his first 3 or 4 drives, Oregon's in for a slog. And so I don't know if that's a Will Stein thing. I don't know if it's a line thing. I don't know if it's a adjustment thing. But I think Oregon is legitimately good, but I don't think they have the consistency to be great. So they look like a playoff team to me, but I don't see them as any real threat to anybody excellent right now.
The Iowa game in 2 weeks should be interesting.
I don't know if there's an early line or anything on that game.
The projected margin is about 7 in favor of Oregon. I don't know if that's the line, but that would be the projected final score by about 7.
Right now, Iowa's favored by 1.5, according to Vegas Insider's aggregation. It went up to 2 and 2.5. Sorry, it opened at -1.5 and immediately swung to Oregon -1.5 too.
I would not favor Iowa in that game.
Okay.
But I understand
Body
the
clock
thought behind it.
Yeah.
I understand the thought behind it. And I do think Iowa's getting better. Speaking of snapshots, I mean, they've just now fully committed to running the ball.
Yep.
And even this past weekend, we saw Mark Gronowski throw it a little bit more effectively against Minnesota in that beatdown. Did
he have his first Big Ten touchdown pass? I believe he did.
He had his first Big Ten touchdown pass, yes.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see what the rest of the way looks like for Oregon, because I was looking at the schedule earlier, and the Iowa game in 2 weeks, they're off this week, but the Iowa game next weekend in week 11 should be interesting. It's on the road. They come back home against Minnesota, but the one that I'm really curious about is the USC game.
Okay.
On the 22nd in, I guess, week 13. Because USC's got the offense.
Yeah.
And this is not to say that they've got any kind of great defense, but I think, to your point, if they're able to get Dante Moore, if he's playing by then, out of rhythm, there's a chance in a game like this where you can fall behind pretty early against the Trojans and what they can do on offense.
Let me stop you right there. The game's not happening in the Coliseum. Right?
I know. I know. It's in Austin.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
I
Especially
didn't
with
say
the
that they
spread.
were going to beat Oregon. I just said I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
And they close out the year on the road at Washington, which who knows with Washington? I don't know. Washington seemed to find something this past weekend.
Also better at home, to be clear.
Yep.
If I'm going to say that about Oregon against USC, who's bad on the road, Washington's bad on the road, much better at home, and that game is in Seattle. Yeah.
We shall see. Write in solidverbal@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on all these teams. If you've got any other snapshots that you'd like to speak to.
Yes.
Email, social media, any of the usual channels will do. We read everything. We can't respond to everything, but we do see it. We do appreciate you interacting. Would encourage you to do more of it if you are ever so inclined. Of course, please leave a star rating or a review. All that stuff helps. We've had more people do that as of late. It just assures other folks out there looking for college football content that we're not a bunch of wackos. We are a bunch of wackos,
We are.
But the show is still fun. So, just want people to know that. To close things out here today, and we usually do this earlier in the episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the latest polling.
Okay. I also want to talk briefly about next week. This is our look ahead episode, but I want to talk polling, and then I want to look to next week.
Absolutely. So here is where the polls stand right now. No big shakeups in the top 10, Dan.
Correct.
Miami and BYU, they are tied for number 10, which is interesting. But otherwise, not a whole lot going on in the top 10. You had a handful of teams that jumped up 3 or 4 spots. Tennessee, Louisville, Cincinnati, Michigan. Houston went from unranked to ranked because, again, they're like 7-1 now. So they got to be ranked. They're in a power conference. They've been playing pretty well. Had a nice win.
They played very well against
They did.
ASU. A beat-up ASU for sure. By the way, not to pat myself on the back here, Ty, but
We both picked it.
not only did we pick it, but we took, what did I end up calling it? Like our little, the deeper looks that we took into a few teams last week on our preview episode. I did Wake Forest, Houston, and Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Not bad.
Okay,
Not
continue.
bad. Among the teams that dropped, obviously Oklahoma, they lost. They dropped down to number 18. Mizzou, they dropped down to 19. We had LSU, ASU, Illinois, and USF all drop out of the top 25. That's the AP top 25.
Yes.
In terms of the new Verballer poll, not a whole lot of movement at the very top. Looks very similar to what you would see on the AP polling side. I think where this gets really interesting, though, is when we try to translate it into a college football playoff bracket.
Okay.
Which is what I did. So there are a couple quirks to consider before I go through this. Okay. I did take the Verballer top 12. I did use that seeding and some assumptions that we can make from that poll to put this bracket together. But I do need to outline some of the quirks that could throw everything into chaos. Okay. I alluded to some of this earlier. I have been going pedal to the metal on some of these tiebreaker scenarios. And they're nuts. These are crazy, man. These are crazy. And I feel like I say that every year with the Big 12, and that's true, but we've got quirks in all 4 conferences to a much less degree in the Big 10. But certainly in the Big 12, there's the possibility for BYU, Texas Tech, Utah, Cincinnati, Houston, TCU, Kansas State, and Arizona State to all go on some kind of run and some combination of those 7 or 8 teams, whatever it is, to end up playing for the title.
Say those
TCU,
once again. Say those once again. Let's go through them individually. Continue.
Texas Tech.
So quarterback issues health-wise, but seems like they're hopefully in a good place, but still a question. Continue.
BYU.
Freshman, first year, recent transfer, finding ways to win after going down and doing so in crazy impressive fashion, though just lost their star running back. We'll see for what time.
Utah.
Did not just absolutely demolish Colorado. Just spanked them back and forth.
That was limb from limb.
Without their starting quarterback, right?
Without their starting quarterback, yeah.
Okay, continue.
Cincinnati.
So sort of out of nowhere after an up and down 2024, have been all offense this year. Just beat Baylor, who have been close in all of these games, in a not close way by 3 touchdowns, right?
That's right.
So good amount of momentum with Cincinnati, though. I think their schedule gets trickier.
Houston,
a nothing but success story this year. But
it's a tough end to the season.
It's a tough end to their season, but the Connor Wigman and Tanner Koziel addition has paid huge dividends. And how do you not just like bow at the altar of Willie Fritz at this point and what he can do for a program? Should be a name in conversations for some of these jobs.
He should be.
Yeah.
And then 3 teams that have been relatively uneven, but all have a ton of upside: TCU, Kansas State, and Arizona State.
Yeah. ASU, we'll see. I mean, Sam Levitt left that game for a little while, I want to say, against Houston, but came back as an absolute warrior. But they have health issues on both sides of the ball. It seems like they could beat anybody in this conference because they beat the team that we have considered to be the class of the conference so far in Texas Tech. Now it looks like BYU. But ASU has the ability to dramatically alter things at the very least.
Yeah, we talked about K-State, TCU. I mean, TCU is sort of uneven as well. Doesn't play a whole lot of defense, obviously still plays offense, but you got a whole grouping of teams that are going to be playing for potentially the conference, maybe a playoff berth or 2.
TCU finishes with Iowa State, BYU on the road, Houston on the road, Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Holy moly. So maybe that is your... Yes.
Adjacent to Big 12 influencers at a minimum.
They're gumpy. They are absolutely gumpy right now. They are going to be near and dear to this race no matter what.
In the ACC, you've got a realistic possibility for Virginia, Duke, Louisville, SMU, and that's in addition to Georgia Tech and Miami, who everybody knows about.
Right.
And I will throw Pitt in there, not because I think it's probable, but because I think it's possible. And
they're in the conversation. They have to be in the conversation. Yeah.
We've come to know that whatever is possible in the ACC or in the Big 12 is something that we need to get out ahead of, because the ASU thing happened a year ago. So we talked about Pitt, but, you know, is Virginia for real? They've been playing a bunch of close games. They've been winning close games.
They have. Chandler Morris's health, I think, up in the air. Maybe.
Yep. Yeah. Duke, Duke is just sort of slow and steady. Yeah. But Duke has had a really good campaign. I still don't really know what to make of Louisville. They obviously had that huge win. It stands to reason that Louisville could have a real shot at this thing. SMU, it would probably need some help, but is still in the conversation. Georgia Tech
hosts Miami, right? SMU hosts Miami. Yeah.
They host Miami. This week, they're a 10-point home dog. We can talk about that one on Thursday. Georgia Tech is the highest ranked of all these teams, still undefeated.
Yeah.
Miami is still a top 10 adjacent team, I guess tied for 10th in the latest AP poll. So clearly they've got a lot to play for. But Miami, by virtue of the tiebreakers that I have seen, would need a little bit of help to shoulder their way into the ACC title game. So there's a lot of possibility and weird potential with the ACC.
By the way, you didn't mention Wake Forest, who just beat SMU, should have beaten Georgia Tech.
I know.
And finishes with a crazy, maybe other than that Duke game to finish things out. That's a winnable Final 5. Florida State on the road, Virginia on the road. Virginia's been playing down and close to everybody. North Carolina, Delaware, and Duke. If Wake Forest continues to look very real, especially on defense, who wants a piece of the Deeks this last month? Nobody.
Who wants a piece of the Deeks? Yeah, Wake Forest, I don't think is part of this conversation. But Wake Forest, let's put it this way, at a minimum, given what we have seen thus far from Jake Dickert, we talked in the preseason about to what end can they translate vibes into success on the field.
Yeah.
They're tough out, man. I stand by what we've been sitting there, pain in the freaking ass.
Buddy, so Bill Connolly's metric in SP+, the likeliest decider of games statistically is the ability to generate and stop explosive plays. Wake Forest has been excellent at both this year, which is why you're seeing the results or near results with Jake Dickert and Wake in year one. If they get a quarterback, they get themselves a quarterback somehow, some way, if there is some billionaire behind the scenes who just loves himself some Wake Forest football, I'm just saying.
If you want to outline the Wake Forest possibility, because there is a possibility, there is a path. The way that Wake Forest could find their way into the ACC title game is A, by winning out.
Yeah.
All right. And that would require a win over Florida State, as you mentioned. They'd have to beat Virginia. I believe the Virginia game's on the road.
You know who beats Florida State? Literally every ACC
Literally
team they play.
They would need to beat UNC, which is definitely winnable.
Yeah.
They would also need to win out against Duke, I believe, on the road in their final game.
Tough. Yeah.
Very tough stretch. If they were to win those games, though, those 4 games, and Pitt knocks off Miami final week of the year, that would be the path to get Wake Forest into that ACC title game, probably against Georgia Tech.
So it would be
possible.
a rematch, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech in the ACC championship game. I'm not the type of person that looks at that and says, oh my gosh, the TV ratings, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest. First of all, they've already faced each other, I believe, in an ACC championship game. I want to say Chan Gailey era Georgia Tech.
That's deep cut, but sure.
I want to say they have. Maybe I got that wrong. But
is that a Jim Grobe Wake Forest?
I want to say yes. Georgia
would
Tech,
have to be.
Wake, ACC championship game. The year was 2006.
In the year 2006.
9-6 final score.
Beautiful.
Maybe Reggie Ball prominently involved. Who's to say? Anyway, my other sidebar with the ACC is I saw the quote about Kirk Herbstreit and Adidas uniforms. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't see this, no.
Kirk Herbstreit just hates Adidas uniforms.
Okay.
He was just like, you put on an Adidas uniform, you just look subpar. And I thought to myself, yeah, I'm not a fan of Adidas uniforms in general, but I think that's a little bit harsh. They've had some decent looks occasionally here and there. I'm an Oregon person, I'm a Nike person, whatever, but I don't feel strongly about it. And then I saw what Miami wore against Stanford.
Oh, I couldn't even watch the game. I couldn't watch it. It hurt my eyes.
And I said to myself, yeah, these are garbage.
Those were horrible. They were horrible uniforms.
It was baby spinach poop. I guess, I know you're not great with shades. That's as close as I could approximate. It was disastrous in a way that I didn't think anybody could do in any sort of design application. It was horrendous from Miami.
Kate came downstairs as I was watching that game. I had it on one of the quad boxes for a minute.
Yeah.
And she's like, whoa, what's going on with that?
Yeah.
Something wrong with the TV? It's no. Something's wrong with the
It looked
with the designer,
like they were
but not the
wearing
TV.
a muddy field.
It was bad. It was really bad. And you know me with colors, man. You even messaged me. How are you getting on with this Miami game? I was like, I'm just not watching it.
Yeah, you can't.
I'm glad it ended up being a blowout just from the standpoint of me not having to go back and watch that because that was a brutal watch for these guys.
All right, your next division, scenario, conference, whatever.
The 2 other ones here, I'll knock out the Big Ten real quick.
Okay.
The only real possibility for quirks is if Michigan beats Ohio State. If Michigan doesn't beat Ohio State, it's going to be Ohio State against Indiana.
What happens if Michigan beats Ohio State?
If Michigan beats Ohio State, that potentially opens up the door for your Oregon Ducks.
Okay. For a rematch?
If they could go on a run. Yep. Or USC, if USC goes on a run.
Right.
Or Iowa. If the Iowa Hawkeyes pull off like 3 upsets, I mean, they've got a tough stretch here to close out their season as well.
Yes.
But if the Iowa Hawkeyes were to go on a bit of a run, and if in addition to that, Michigan were to beat Ohio State, those are the teams I'm looking at that would have a real possibility for presumably playing Indiana for the Big Ten title. I am not expecting that.
Okay.
I am just giving people an outline of what is possible. The art of the possible here on the Solid Verbal.
Thank you. By the way, just to close the loop, do not go gentle into that good night. Dylan Thomas. It's a poem. Okay, continue.
And then on the SEC side, we've got quirks that I think are mostly limited to the 5 teams that we're going to talk about in this projected bracket.
Okay.
Those being Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Vandy. Some combination of those teams right now appear to be the ones that have the inside track for the SEC title game. Obviously, Texas, though. You mentioned Texas earlier. I will mention Texas again now. There is a scenario that gets Texas into the playoff, maybe into the SEC title game if they win out, but they have to win out. And it is not an easy stretch for the Longhorns. Those are the 6 teams, though, that I am mostly looking at in the SEC. Some combination of them play for the title. Some combination of them, more of them than not, get into the final playoff field is what I'm looking at right now.
Right. Okay. I like that.
So how does this translate, Dan?
How does it translate to a top 12? Oh, on the screen.
I've got the bracket up on the screen for those of you watching the video. The way that this shakes out, again, would be Ohio State as the 1, Indiana as the 2 this year. We'd have A&M as the 3 and Alabama as the 4. Those would be your first round buys. Remember, there's straight seeding.
Straight seeds.
This year. So if you win your conference, but you're outside the top 4, you don't get that bye. You get in, but you don't get one of those first round buys. The way this would set up would be Ole Miss hosting Miami, the 8 hosting the 9, with the winner playing Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
The number 5, Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets at home against Navy. I've got Navy in here because they were the highest rated, presumably G6 conference champion in our Verballer Top 12 poll. But the way that this is shaking out, the way that it is looked, at least per rankings, is somebody from the American.
Right.
It seems like the polls are favoring some team from the American, be it Memphis or Tulane or...
Memphis is currently ranked ahead of Navy in the AP.
In the AP poll, yeah.
Yes.
We had Navy higher on ours.
So
that's why I put them there. But
totally.
The larger point on the G6 qualifier in this year, and again, if some of these scenarios go haywire, you could end up having a much different bracket. Because remember, it's 12 teams. If you win your conference, if you're one of the 5 highest rated conference champions, you get in. So what could end up happening here is we have somebody come out of nowhere, much like we saw last year, and shoulder out a team like, Notre Dame.
Yep.
Shoulder out a team like Vanderbilt. I don't know. It's possible. Navy is the one that we had sneaking their way in, knocking a team like Notre Dame out, in effect. Now, Navy plays Notre Dame.
I was going to say, they can do that on the field.
Yeah. I don't feel too nervous about that matchup, but okay, whatever.
They have
Georgia
North Texas
Tech
as well, and Memphis. What a
Georgia
schedule
Tech
end up.
hosting Navy in like the Paul Johnson Bowl.
Yes. Great.
With the winner playing Alabama. On the other side of the bracket, you would have Vandy on the road in Eugene against your Oregon Ducks, the 10 versus the 7.
Yep.
With the winner playing Indiana, potential rematch for Oregon.
On a neutral site, yeah.
And then last but not least, you would have Georgia hosting BYU, 6-11 matchup with the winner playing Texas A&M.
Yep. With a 5'11 quarterback. A 6'11 matchup with 5'11 Bear Bachmeier. Continue.
So I'm looking at this, and I think you feel really good if you're Alabama. I think you feel less good if you're a team like an Ohio State, having to get the winner of Ole Miss Miami.
Yeah.
I think you're cautiously optimistic if you're Indiana, given what you just had to say about Oregon. And I think the fact that they've got a lot more firepower, at least on offense, than Vanderbilt, but who the hell knows? And the Texas A&M matchup could be interesting, as you've got BYU against Georgia. I think most people would probably favor Georgia in that matchup. So Georgia A&M on a neutral site would be a pretty big one.
Huge.
But right now, if you're an Alabama fan, you got to be feeling pretty good about at least this projection, making your way into the semifinal, presumably against a team like an Ohio State.
Agree. I would feel
That's
great.
what it looks like right now in terms of our baller top 12.
Yeah, I would feel great about Indiana here too.
Man, you're really
well, I'm
burning
not
your
down
Oregon.
on Oregon in the way that it might sound like, obviously, but just, I don't know, Indiana getting that bye and then getting one of these teams on a neutral site with time. I don't know. They feel like one of those teams that would perform well, but I guess they didn't last year with some time to prepare against Notre Dame. Last year's a different year, different team. Fascinating. I think the Navy inclusion is nice, but a little beyond that with the rest of their schedule.
Listen, I'm with you. I'm just going.
I know. You're just going where we stand right now.
We're going snapshot based on the Verballer Top 12 poll. Again, you can vote every week at verballers.com if you're signed up as a certified or premium member. On occasion, we throw it out to the masses as well. But that's what it looks like as of now. If you are listening to this on the podcast and you want to get a look at this projected bracket, go down into the description of the podcast. I'll post a link so that you can click through and find the image and see what we're thinking and maybe talk it through with you and your people.
By the way, week 10, I have no idea what to think, but there are two opportunities for the funniest possible thing to happen.
Okay.
And that is Penn State beating Ohio State and Florida beating Georgia.
This would be the year that Penn State would beat Ohio State, wouldn't it?
This would be the year that Penn State would beat Ohio State, where this just and James Franklin emerges from the booth and it was all a trick. It was the whole thing was a ruse.
Yeah, Terry Smith pulls off a mask and it's really James Franklin.
Yes, the Mission Impossible style mask. Otherwise, there's a lot of like super interesting games, but not obvious bangers in week 10, right? Is that a fair way to put it?
I think a fair way to put it is that, yes.
Texas Tech, Kansas State, I'm really looking forward to after last week.
I think that my window of opportunity is going to be at night.
Okay.
Because we have so few of these during the college football season with the way that they have scheduled these games in recent years. The biggest games are always at night. This week, there are some games that are of interest, for sure, at night. But unless you've got a rooting interest in any of them, I say make your plans now. Send the text message from work, hey, honey, let's go out Saturday night.
Sure.
Let's go to a nice restaurant.
Wow. Ty the Romantic. Let's
Do
not
something
watch
fancy.
Oklahoma, Tennessee.
Yeah, let's not.
Yeah.
We don't want to watch that.
Yeah. That was the
We don't
Baker
wanna watch
Mayfield game
Oklahoma.
way back when, right? A huge comeback?
It was.
Yeah.
It was. But to your point, right? We do have a couple interesting ones. So I mentioned Vandy and Texas right now. Texas favored by about a field goal. There is the Penn State, Ohio State. Ohio State's favored by 3 touchdowns, of course.
Yeah.
Navy at North Texas should be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I said Notre Dame plays Navy this week. Notre Dame plays Boston
BC,
College this week.
yeah.
They get Navy next week.
Yeah.
Miami at SMU, which you mentioned earlier. Duke at Clemson, which is just interesting for a whole multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
And then Arizona State, Iowa State, a rematch of the Big 12 title. That's all in the early block. Those are some good games for you if you like building quads.
Yes.
Afternoon block, you've got the cocktail party, Georgia, 7.5-point favorite against Florida. You've got Texas Tech, Kansas State.
Yes.
Texas is a 7.5-point favorite on the road at K-State. And then you've got Virginia.
Dude, I
on the road
circled
at
this
Cal.
one. I circled this.
Yeah.
Virginia, who plays nothing but weird close games, traveling across the country to play against Cal, no stranger to weird close games, unless it's San Diego State.
And then the night games on Saturday, Oklahoma, Tennessee, should be a close game. I think it'll be a close game.
I hope so.
The NBC game should also be a really good one. USC on the road at Nebraska. USC a 6-point road favorite. Actually, the game that I am most excited about is in the late window. And if it weren't for the fact that you and I are doing the midnight streams, I probably wouldn't even stay up for this one. But I'm going to be fully plugged into what's going on as we're doing our thing because Cincinnati at Utah looks damn exciting to me.
Man. 10:15 Eastern.
Yeah.
That's looking real. I mean, depends on Devin Dampier, but yeah. I'm totally with you. And I think we get the first of the Wazoo Oregon State home and home.
We get the first of the Wazoo Oregon State home and home.
Yeah.
The reason I should add that we did these brackets and talk through projections like this now is because as you are listening to this on Tuesday, a week from today is when we're going to get the first of the 6 college football playoff rankings. So as a bit of an advanced primer for that, this is what we're thinking as of now per the Verboller Top 12. We'll see what they have to say.
You know what they're going to say to themselves, what the internal monologue is going to be before the cameras roll? All they're going to say is, don't say anything that anybody will be able to use against us in the coming weeks. Just be plain, be vanilla, which, by the way, here's another sidebar. Vanilla is not plain. Vanilla is flavorful as an ingredient.
I know, I'm with you. I'm so with you.
Be plain, be just extra cautious, because as soon as you start flapping your lips, weird stuff is going to come out and they're going to use it against us. So I anticipate a more, the most boring possible explanation of everything.
Let me close out with this because you tiptoed around it.
Uh-oh.
What happened with the Uber?
All I do is I keep leaving things in Ubers, Ty.
So when we were up in State College, you left a beautiful camera in
Yeah.
an Uber. Thankfully, we were able to recover it, get it sent back to you. So
This wasn't lost
crisis
on me.
averted.
Yeah.
Crisis averted, but what happened this time?
We were taking an Uber back from lunch to the hotel near like the start time of the wedding, and I had brought one of those portable battery packs with me. And anytime I leave an Uber or go anywhere, I always check my pockets, right? Keys, phone, and like AirPods are in my other one because I do go for walks and listen to stuff. And I felt my pockets. I was all good, and I left. I had the battery pack there, which is in the same shape as the phone, which was on the seat, which I had just put down for some reason. And you have to scramble when you leave something in an Uber. That's what I learned, especially when it's something like a phone. And so I'm scrambling. I go to the Uber website on my iPad in the hotel room, and they're like, hey, yeah, we're going to send you a text. I'm like, I can't see the text. It's on my phone. It was an SMS. It wasn't anything that I could check on my iPad. And so I was scrambling, and then they asked for a credit card number. I had to find the autofill portion of my iPad. I was scrambling. I finally got a hold of the driver. He was like, yeah, I'll be there in a few hours. I'm like, I can't wait that long. I'm addicted. And then he was back in like an hour and a half, and everything was fine, and gave him a healthy cash tip for his generosity in making his way back to the hotel. But yeah, another full-blown panic about leaving something in an Uber. I'm not great with this stuff, Ty. I'm just... in a lot of different areas of my life, I'm not terribly bright. So here we are. We were able to get through the wedding. It was a great wedding. Hit the dance floor hard. A lot of, you know this stuff better than I do. Pink Pony Club.
Oh, yeah. Little Chapel Roan.
Yeah, that was very...
You told me about Chapel Roan.
I told you about...
I know this stuff better than you told me about it.
That's true. That was the song, more than anything Taylor Swift, more than anything else that was played by this band, that united the generations. The kids were screaming out Pink Pony Club, which I think is about a strip club. I think.
It isn't, but
continue. It isn't?
No.
Oh. Is it?
It's about a different kind of club.
Oh,
but continue.
Okay. It's about, is it a kids club or is it more of an adult club?
It's definitely more of an adult club.
Got it. Okay. But that was the song that united the generations. People were most excited to sing Pink Pony Club. If that's any sort of indication of where we are. I don't know.
Great song. Love that song.
Okay. Otherwise, the wedding was good. Desserts were good. Venue was great. Always good to get to San Diego. So congratulations to Illini fan Scott and his beautiful bride.
Beautiful. Well, it is a pleasure to have you back. It is a pleasure again to once again be with the Verballerhood. It is a pleasure to have so much to talk about. We are not short on any college football topics. It's going to remain this way from now until the end of the season.
Okay.
I put a call out last week. I will put that call out again now because we've had a couple people write in about this, but I do still want to do a segment on the fan bases that have been the most tortured so far through 2025.
Okay.
So if you have more suggestions, I need more of them. solidverbal@gmail.com. Write in, let me know. But we're going to do that segment at some point in one of these Tuesday episodes, all right?
Can't wait.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrand, thank you as always for downloading, for listening, for supporting. Check us out at verballers.com. Leave a star rating or a review. And of course, stay solid.
Peace.